Hi, my friend, it's Pat Sloan here. Welcome to December. That's always how I feel the first of the month. It's like, welcome to this month. It is a, 30 days of possibilities, sometimes 31. Sometimes one less, but it is a whole set of possibilities coming up, stretching out in these chunks called a month. And I always like to celebrate them. On our calendar, I put different items that I pull off of these websites that show you all the celebrations for the month. And always on the first of the month, there might be 20, which is crazy. I mean, you can't talk about 20 things. And some of them are like, oh, they span the whole month. Well, I always ask our ambassadors if they want to go out and see any that they like and want to add on, and because it's fun, they might see something I miss, or we might all be like, yeah, that's a really cool one. So today there's a couple. One is celebrating neckties. So I think and I've never taken apart and put a necktie in a quilt, and I think that would be a fun thing to do someday. It's just never been on my list to do, but I do think that they are marvelous to look at. And so if you have put a necktie into a quilt, we would love to see it. We, the royal we, which would be all of us, would love to see it. So put it out in my group, Quilt Along with Pat Sloan. The other thing that's today that I think is an important thing to remember, as well as our ambassadors also agree, is it's Rosa Parks Day. And Rosa Parks is a very brave woman who decided one day it was enough. She wasn't going to be segregated on the bus anymore. She would just sit where there was an empty seat and not where she was supposed to sit because she was black, which started and was contributing to a whole movement of things for making a better life for people. And it made me realize that I saw the bus that Rosa Parks was on. I had kind of forgotten about that. We went to the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, and if you go there, there is a huge celebration and display of the civil rights era things, and the bus is right in the middle. So I'm going to just pop a picture up from the museum website of the bus. And so it is quite a moving exhibit. And if you get to the museum, you can go and see it. So I have the links down below here in the description box. You can actually go and read about the bus and how they found it and restored it to put it in the museum, which I thought was fabulous. So anyways, today we're celebrating a very brave woman, Rosa Parks. Okay, a couple other things I have is I want to talk about the difference between digitally printed fabric and the regular fabric that we get, our quilting cottons. I have a few other things that we'll see what else I can fit in. So before we do that, I wanted to celebrate my backdrop today with one of my Christmas quilts. This Christmas quilt didn't get on the wall in my didn't get it put in my living room, so I thought, well, I'm going to hang it here today to jump off for December. This is a free pattern from the Fat Quarter Shop. It also has a smaller version, which I think is done with 2-inch squares, 2-inch finished, and I thought I did that one, but now I couldn't find it. So anyway, I brought the big one out. I put the links down below to get to the pattern so that you can download it. It's super fun and fast to do with the charm pack and maybe 2 charm packs. I forget how many it takes. But then I quilted mine just in straight lines. And you could do the wavy line. I happen to do straight on this one, but that just quilted up really nice and quick. And then I have just a light background on there, something I already had in my stash at the time. We did this a couple years ago. Okay, let's talk about fabric that is printed digitally or fabric as the traditional printing methods that we currently have. Now, a lot of you, particularly if you've bought panels in the last few years, quite a few of the panels are printed by digital methods now. And digital printing of fabric is very sophisticated and has evolved quite a bit. I mean, years and years ago, there was very little of it done, but they have made huge advances in what they can do. And so what I did is I chatted with my friend David Lochner, who is the president of Benartex, and which is my fabric company that makes my fabric lines. And I asked him if he would just answer a few questions. So David, let me just email you a few questions, and he says absolutely. So I am going to pass along what I've learned about the fabrics. First, let me just show you a couple, because most of the fabric companies are doing this. This is a digitally printed. This is a digital. I'm just going to say digital each time because... Okay, so this is one you've seen from Moda with the great big Santa. There's one with a snowman too, and this is digital. So there you go. Another one from Riley Blake, which is a panel. That's why I say if you've been getting panels, a lot of the panels are done this way. And I think it gives them a bit more flexibility for reprinting. And so here was a panel that was my friend Sandy Gervais did for Riley Blake. And let me now, then I have a group here to show you from Benartex of different styles so that you can get a feel for what is capable with the technology. So what I asked him is, first of all, because a lot of you had questions, I get questions periodically, what's the durability of them, between the traditional and the digital? Will they fade in a similar way, etc., when washed or just out in the, in the light? So here's what I've learned. David said he has some digital fabrics in his office for the past 8 years. Those fabrics have been there hanging in his office for the past 8 years, and they look as vibrant as the day that he received them from the mill. He says, in the meantime, he says, no one can say with confidence how the digital will perform over time because we don't have a history of it yet. 100 years from now, they'll go back and look at these textiles just as our textile researchers now look at textiles from 100 years past. You don't know 100 years past when they first started making it how they would perform. You just don't know. They can guess it'll be good, but only the physical passing of time will tell there. He said that the dyes that were used even 50 years ago, 100 years ago to produce fabrics have changed. They change and evolve. So that makes a difference in comparison as well, because the actual dyes that were made in a piece of fabric from 100 years ago are different than how the dyes are worked now. So that is another consideration that textile experts look at. Okay. Can you get more detail? This is my understanding, my remembrance. I asked him, David, can you get more detail in the print with digital than you can with traditional? And he says, yes. He says that you can get picture perfect on digital fabric because you can get a whole lot of detail. He says the fine line work comes through beautifully on a digital printing. He says there's no overlap problems. You may have seen this. He gave me some technical terms. He tried to keep it high level, but when you've ever bought a piece of fabric maybe on a seconds table where you've seen like the lines overlap, like there's a color line or something and it's kind of funky and you can say, oh, well, the printing didn't match up. That's what your brain is seeing. He says you don't have that issue ever with digital. It's a different process. So those are called screens and things like that in technical terminology. So he says the downfall for digital is that you can't add sort of the extra sparkle that some of the companies like to use, and Benartex does like to use that, adding of silver or gold or pearlesque or glow in the dark. He says those things cannot be added in a digital process. You have to use traditional print methods to get that, which was interesting. Do you have a similar selvage on digital? And he said, no, it is different. You don't need all the color blocks. And so I'm going to show you that. When you're doing, printing, like here's one, this beautiful train fabric that came the other day was sitting on my table. So I'll just show you that. So there's the color blocks. You don't have those on a digital fabric. So let me show you I got this one here. Did I have? Oh, the bottom, wait. I know it did, yeah. So you see on here, even though there's lots of colors on this, there's no color blocks. They don't need them. They're there for the printing process, and this doesn't require it. Can you do other widths of fabric? You can do any width of fabric for digital up to 120. And they said that is actually a physical issue with the machinery. So, 120 is pretty much what quilting goes up to. And there are a couple places that do larger, but most are 120. So let me show you, then I have one last thing, but let me show you a few of the prints from Benartex. Now, I want to show you this as an example. When you look, this is one of the fabrics from Emma that I'm going to use for the Sweet Childhood Memories Quilt Along or Black Wednesday. But you can see here how many colors there are. I mean, it's pretty easy for you to distinguish. It's a gray background with a couple shades of peach, some outline, some yellow, some green. And it's really simple. And then you can see on the edge for the traditional printed. So there's all the color dots, and those are the colors, those are the only colors that's used. And they have only a specific number of these they can do. They don't have to infinity like you do with pretty much with digital. Now this one looks more, it's still traditional printed, but you can see like it looks like there's a lot more, like loads of shades of blue, but this is it. This is all that's on there. Now I'm going to show you a couple of the ones that Benartex has that they sent me. So here is this cute panel. Look at this. Spring Hill Farm. So you can see like the background has a couple shades of gray. The body of each animal has several shades of brown, several shades of black. The truck has several shades of aqua. Look at that. So then there's several shades of gold. And so, those all those different shadings, those amounts of shadings add up. And in traditional printing, the artists, the textile artists who work with this will be very specific and work the colors. They're just really good at not reusing things that don't need to be, like they'll reuse what needs to be reused to make it almost look like there's more colors because they only have a set number of colors. I forget what that number is, but let's say it's 15 or so, but they can't really do any more than that. Okay, here's another beautiful one. So there's looks like mermaids with all these beautiful shades of purples and teals and yellows and oranges. So this is a digital. So you can see how there is just no restriction on the digital. I'm saving the Thomas Kincaid one till last because it's kind of a wowzer. It's the one where you go like, whoa. Okay, so here is another one with loads of shades of blues and purples and pinks, and then there's green in there as well, as you can see towards the bottom, and white. So isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, and then in the Thomas Kincaid, you can really see how that it looks just like he's a painter. He's passed away now, but he was a painter that does all of these extremely detailed paintings. And here you can see on this panel all of the different layers of color. Here's some more of the smaller cottages. Beautiful, beautiful panel. So that is what can be produced, that level of detail that can be produced with a digital printing. And then I was curious about how much has to be run off on digital. Is it different than traditional? He says traditional, their smallest minimum number of yardage is 3,000 yards. So that, that's for each piece of fabric, the minimum they can print is 3,000 yards. For digital, the minimum they can print is 1,000 yards. So that is an advantage for the printing company, for like Benartex and Riley Blake and Moda and whatever the fabric companies, because particularly like with panels, if it's really popular and it's just sort of the panel that's really popular, they could reprint it again. It also would probably help for custom fabric orders, like a lot of shop hops will order a special fabric for their shop hop. Now they would only have to order, 1,000. So he says there are some mills that will do between 500 and 1,000 as a minimum. So it depends on the mill and their abilities, and that's who the manufacturers work with. So anyway, I thought that was super interesting to learn about and, find, out that they're just such a beautiful quality fabric. They feel wonderful. So if you go into a store and you feel one of them, you will notice that they feel really nice. They're very soft. There's really nothing different. I think years ago, some of the first digital printing ones, particularly the low batch ones, like if you're ordering something like from one of those companies that just does like a yard of fabric, that fabric maybe has a different feel to it than these are now, because there's just huge advancements have been made. Okay, so that was just fun to learn about and fun to share with you. Okay, I want to tell you that there were winners for the book, and that was Pam, who said that she loves that book. She saw a few of the quilts in it that would be doable for her, and so that was what made her super excited about the book. And then the Leckerli cookies all went to Sherry, whose favorite holiday treat is Rocky Road fudge, and Suzanne, her favorite holiday tradition is baking cookies. Yeah. Just her favorite holiday sweet is peppermint hot chocolate. And then Susan was the last tin of cookies goes to her, and then her favorite holiday memory was going to Grandma's for Christmas Eve dinner. So that's a good memory, right? Christmas Eve dinner with Grandma. Love it. So I'm just going to wrap it up here. We'll talk about some of those other things in the next few days as I come up. So on my cross stitch, I just wanted to show you where I am and what my thought process is here. I have gotten down to the turn right here, and what I decided to do is I had stopped working over here because I didn't want to mess up and they didn't match like in the middle, because that would just be so me. So instead I thought I'm just doing one side, getting the turn and going across, and then I can match it up. And then in here I just have one more line and the flower, we'll finish the flower and a leaf. So I'm going to because this part is like less and it's kind of like feels like I'll be done, I'm going to try to work like 3/4 the way across this bottom and then go back to this part. So that'll be my reward. Okay, my friend. Well, if you enjoyed hearing about the different fabric types, hearing about how traditional and the digital fabrics look and feel, leave me a note if you enjoyed hearing about that. And if you haven't made one of these, or if you want to make another one, the link is down below in the description box. So I love you. Mwah. Thank you for being here in the Sloan Zone. I will see you online.